Blog Talk Radio.
Thank you for joining us on History FM Radio.
Can you hear me? Out on the long road, out on the shoreline, between the sea and the foam. I swam to heaven from the depths of hell, doing the backstroke, where angels fear the tread.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Paranormal Geeks Radio. I want to start this off with a Bible verse, Genesis 6. There were giants in the earth in these days, and also after that, when the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. And for about 20 years, my guest tonight has researched structures built in ancient America. He has collected thousands of newspaper and magazine articles about the subject, and stone structure research has led to an interest in the ancient giants. Those skeletons are found in the United States from coast to coast. So tonight I'd like to bring on our guest, Jim Vieira. Jim, are you with us tonight?
Yes, I am. How you doing, Jim?
Very good, sir. Very good.
Is it your birthday?
No, mine is actually Thursday.
Oh, I thought we had a birthday special Jim show scheduled. That your birthday was today. So happy unbelated birthday.
It'll be an early one, yeah. No, mine's Thursday. I'll be a big.
Hello? Hello? Jim? All right, I'll continue. If Jim's having some technical difficulties, I'd like to apologize, but I didn't do it. So my name is Jim Vieira. I am a stonemason, a writer, and a researcher, and I've been studying stone structures in New England and ancient monuments in America for about 20 years. And I belong to the Northeast Antiquities Research Association, organization that investigates stone structures and stone ruins in New England and tries to preserve them and study them. And about 20 years ago, while searching in the woods, I began to find odd stone structures that didn't fit the colonial context. I'm a stonemason by trade, so I have an eye for stone when I hike in the woods. And I started to see things like turtles and serpent walls and strange non-utilitarian structures. And then I ran into a book called Manitou by Jim Heater and Byron Dix, two researchers who investigated the ruins of New England for about 7 years. And I saw that there was a large community of people doing the same thing I was doing, so I felt compelled to continue. And what I've uncovered is quite a bit of evidence, along with other researchers, that there was a ceremonial or a Native American ceremonialism in the Northeast for about 8,000 or 9,000 years of stone and shell and earth and other structures. And it, just like every other part of the country that has these particular ceremonial structures, the Northeast also, I believe, and many others believe, have them also.
I made it back. I have no idea. I just got disconnected and had to call back in.
Well,
Thanks for picking up the ball and running with it there, Jim.
No, that's cool. I didn't want to leave you hanging. I was just telling about kind of my background, about how I encountered what I've been studying for the last 20 years.
Well, now these structures have been found all over the United States, but mostly in the East and the Midwest. Is that correct?
Well, there are different.
From Wisconsin on down, and
well, what you have kivas and cliff dwellings and all this intricate and elaborate stonework in the Southwest that was built by the Hopi, the Anasazi, the Pueblo peoples, I think is the appropriate way to name the native civilizations out there. And they showed a high level of mathematics, geometry, engineering, and astronomy in their creations. But in the eastern half of the United States, you have many massive earth structures, like earthen pyramids, geometric forms. I guess what I'll say is when the colonists showed up, they encountered about 200,000 earthen structures, mounds, pyramids, and geometric forms that were astounding. Like Cahokia, Illinois, that we were just talking about. It's 100-foot high, 14-acre base, which is 1 acre larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza. It required 22 million cubic yards of soil to be cubic feet of soil to be brought from over a mile away to construct the 4-level tiered pyramid. And it these amazing structures, 20 and 50-foot circles and octagons that measure the 18.61 metonic cycle of the moon. And then you get into the Northeast, and you find, the oldest burial mound in the country is a 7,500-year-old stone burial mound in Labrador at Lansomore, built by the Maritime Archaic, a civilization that is at least 9,000 years old, that traveled thousands of nautical miles from New Jersey up to Noliac Cove in Labrador, had intricate geometric designs on their artifacts, and hunted swordfish in the cold North Atlantic. And I did some lobstering in Boston when I was in college, and it is brutal to work those seas. So a very sophisticated culture we know little about.
It's, when you're doing the lobstering, you're in boats that are designed for that, and with them, they probably didn't have too many different boats, so you had to just make do with what you had.
They traveled thousands of nautical miles, like up to 9,000 years ago, and fish for codfish and swordfish. They found many bones at the Maritime Archaic sites along the North Atlantic coast. And so, just another episode of a piece of history we know little about for some odd reason.
Yeah, because of course, I graduated from high school quite a few years ago, but I don't remember learning any of this. It was just the hunters and gatherers that were here when Columbus came over and discovered us, which that wasn't right either. But these weren't hunters and gatherers, were they? They were more miners and.
That's a good point right there. There's some contention about the amount of copper that was taken out of the Great Lakes thousands of years ago. Upper Peninsula in Michigan, let's see, between 100 million and 1.5 billion pounds of copper was excavated out of thousands of mines, and there are estimates from, at both ends, but the reality is the native civilizations in the country did astounding things, like They showed advanced geometry, mathematics, engineering, obviously.
Right.
Lived in cities 10, 20, 30,000 strong. Cahokia, Moundsville, Etowah.
Cahokia is one of the largest, wasn't it, at its time?
Exactly. In fact, I think it was the largest city. It was larger than any European city until Paris in the 1800s, if I'm correct. So we're talking about anything but nomadic. Well, that's the point. When one civilization, a conquering civilization, comes in to try to dominate another, the first thing that is done is the destruction of the burial places and tombs of the former heroes. And that absolutely took place with the destruction of many of these earthen mounds that were burial mounds and other structures. And then on top of that, the next step is the destruction of the race itself, which, I live near Amherst in Western Mass, and Jeffrey Amherst is named after Amherst College, a very prestigious school. And the guy was essentially the originator of biological warfare, giving Native Americans blankets with smallpox. And, so we have this hidden kind of disturbing history that happened with what happened with white settlers in this country. I'll say that.
Yeah, and these early settlers, they weren't they were a separate race than the Native Americans that were there later and that we have now, correct?
I'm sorry, like early settlers.
The early ancients, like the Cahokias and everything. Those the people who lived there. They were a completely separate Native American race.
Oh, well, I think archaeologists have confirmed that the mounds were built by either the ancestors of what were present-day Native Americans in the 16 and 1700s. They're, how do I express this? There are some theories. I guess that's where the whole giant thing comes in. There's been a lot of conjecture about lost races and kind of, stealing credit away from the magnificence of what Native Americans did. De Soto in the 1500s, in his journals, talked about the Natchez tribes continuing to build earthen mounds when he showed up. I think it was in Louisiana, if I'm not mistaken, or Mississippi. What happened was, frankly, a mythology had to be created by colonists because Native Americans needed to be portrayed as nomadic and savage and unsophisticated, so white settlers could steal the land. So this myth of the lost race was created to kind of denigrate the accomplishments of Native Americans, because you cannot celebrate and destroy a culture at the same time. So you're not going to say, "Oh my God, look at the civilization!"
Exactly.
It's the most incredible. These you go and you can't believe it. Massive serpent mounds in geometric forms, and like I said, eclipse predictors. And one of the problems was, by the time the colonists showed up, I think a lot of infectious disease had spread from the Spanish explorers early in the 1500s, and a lot of the races were disorganized and decimated when white colonists showed up. So it's like that organization that was happening around centers like Cahokia had broken down. But a lot of it, frankly, was racism and greed. And I got to say, Native civilizations were amazing stewards of the land for over 10,000 years, and we've come in 400 years and turned it into Walmarts and parking lots and weapons. And not to be too harsh, but I'm kind of a fan of Native civilization.
Oh yeah, even just 40 years ago was a lot nicer. But
yes.
I've been down. Like I told you earlier, I've been down to Cahokia a couple times, and I think they were thinking that one of the big downfalls there was the entire city, and it was a huge city, was walled with trees. They cut down trees and made like a log wall all the way around it, if I remember right.
Yes, deforestation.
And a lot of deforestation was their downfall. They had to keep going farther and farther out to hunt, and even though the Mississippi River was pretty close, they had to keep going out farther and farther to hunt for the deer and stuff.
Absolutely. Like environmental I am not pointing to like a utopian civilization. I guess, there was just such a higher level of respect and a different, level of connection that existed. And, I'm not trying to create some mythology of the past, but I really feel that in my personal experience and my study of native cultures. I just feel there was a much higher level of that. But that doesn't mean that there weren't warring times and difficulties and stuff like that. I recently did a TEDx talk. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. And, it was the number one watched TEDx in the world with 120,000 views in a couple of weeks, and it got pulled from the internet by the fine folks at TED, probably because of some of what we'll speak about in a couple of minutes. But I really think it's like, I'm kind of from the wrong side of the tracks, and sometimes I go on rants and I try to, just keep my act together. But I really was just really rushed to do the whole thing because it was only 15 minutes. But I really felt compelled to talk about an example of a civilization that lived with a higher level of love and respect and connection than our society does. And I think those are dangerous ideas for some reason. Everything is spun and censored, and you hear like corporate speak out everybody. I just think it was so that people were into what I was saying just because it was unfiltered, quite frankly. And I think, beyond my rants and raves about the Smithsonian and the Koch brothers, I just think those ideas are not welcome, by the system of control that we live under.
Yeah, it just keeps. It's like a big circle. We just keep going back. Well, no, that's not going to make any sense. Never mind what I'm going to say there. One of the other things I found interesting, with the TEDx talk, right after you were on Coast to Coast, it was very easy to find on YouTube. But then I wanted to listen to it again, and I couldn't find it. And every place that I did find, wherever I did find it, there was just a fuzzy screen with a message. I can't remember what the message was. But yeah, and if you go back far enough with all this, since we're on this about being big America or corporate America, we're going to jump over to the Giants real quick, or go back over the mounds.
Yep.
When the Giants kept getting found in the 1800s, there would almost every newspaper account said something about there was always an account of the Smithsonian coming and taking the bones, and now there's nothing. They don't know anything about them.
Yeah, what I found was, I'll quickly say that I was reading the town histories of New England, looking for accounts of pre-colonial stonework, the colonists showing up and quote unquote finding Indian walls or Indian burial stone mounds at the time, just to kind of look into the past and say, let's see what the colonists reported when they showed up. And indeed I found, many reports of stonework that existed when the colonists showed up. But then I found a skeleton mentioned with 8 foot tall with double rows of teeth by George Sheldon, the eminent historian of Deerfield, Massachusetts. And I was talking to my brother. I'm like, what the hell does this mean? 8 foot tall, double rows of teeth? It's at Halloween, And I went to the museum where Sheldon founded in Deerfield. Very, very prestigious and eminent historian, one of the first preservationists in the country. I talked to the curator there, and I said, do you know that there's this account in the town history of Deerfield? He gave me Sheldon's archaeological scrapbook, and he said, you might find this of interest. And this, I say it's my Da Vinci Code moment. I opened it up, and Sheldon had pasted together articles about the mound builders, the Zuni Indians, other things in ancient America, and giant skeleton reports. 7 and 8 foot tall in Ohio, 7 foot double rows of teeth in Hadley, Massachusetts. A report of the 9 foot tall Cattaraugus County and museum, 9 foot find, I should say. And and I found that in the Curiosity and Relics guidebook of the museum, they had on display a thigh bone of an over 8 foot tall skeleton. that was reinterred by a physical anthropologist that I spoke with recently. So there's this whole giant thing going on around the museum. I started to read through other town histories in Massachusetts, and I found 7-foot-tall, double rows of teeth, Martha's Vineyard, 7'8", double rows of teeth, Middleborough, Mass. On and on and on, all over there, all around the country. I mean, all around New England. Then I found that the same phenomena happen all around the country, with thousands of accounts from scientific journals, American Antiquarian, Scientific American, the Smithsonian's own reports, their own ethnology reports, New York Times, LA Times, on and on and on. And I'll quickly say, listing anatomic anomalies that could not have been known about in a time of inefficient communication over decades of time, like double rows of teeth mentioned from Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts, to Catalina Island, California.
Exactly.
All around the country. And you could say, oh, I found the 10-foot skeleton and blah, 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 but you cannot know the level. There's like 17 specific phrases that are used for these observational accounts. These are not somebody's opinions about philosophy or religion. They are first-hand accounts of what they're seeing before their eyes, oftentimes by anthropologists and archaeologists, not just farmers everywhere.
Exactly, and like you said, they're from the East Coast to the West Coast, and and sporadic in between. I mean, I think if I remember right, Wisconsin, Michigan, I believe Illinois. There have been some found in Illinois, Indiana, Ohio.
Oh, every single multiples in every single state in the union. Absolutely, just beyond belief. Thousands, not like 16. And this, I'll quickly make the point. Let me talk about what the skeptics say about that. Okay. They call them mastodon bones and mammoth bones, which is absurd. I'm talking about these reports went up into the 1960s and some in the 70s. 1959, Don Dragoo, the curator of the section of man for the Carnegie Institution, unearthed a 7'2" skeleton with a massive jawbone at the Creasp Mound, I think in West Virginia, and he writes about it. He has a picture of the 7'2" skeleton, and he talks about the anatomic anomaly of the huge jawbone, calling it the Adena jaw. This isn't like some farmer in 1720. These are accounts into the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s by well-respected, the head of anthropology for the Smithsonian, on and on and on. W.J. Holland, the head of anthropology for the Carnegie, unearthing in the 20s between an 8 and 9 foot skeleton. You have leading anthropologists and archaeologists reporting these things in great detail. These are not mastodon bones. They are not sideshow hoaxes, Barnum and Bailey style. They are often just crated up and shipped to the Smithsonian, never to be seen again, with no perceived gain by the person who found it. Every argument, and I look at both sides. I'm not, I think skeptics have a place in this world, that there's a lot of real shaky research that's done outside the professional fields that does need to be called out, but they don't turn the same eye towards anomalies in their own profession, like the Clovis barrier, for instance. But I will say that all their arguments only strengthen my case in this matter. They're all ludicrous, and it only makes this whole thing, I'm sorry it can be long-winded. I will quickly say, though, okay, this is either the greatest hoax in human history, bar none, with the most widely inaccurate observational reports and accountings of phenomena that is right in front of people's eyes, or the reverse is it's completely true. And a skeptic can say, oh, this, Cardiff giant was a hoax, which is true, but he's going to have to go through 2,596 accounts in scientific journals and archaeological bulletins and debunk every single one of them, because if any of these accounts are true, 8, 9, 10, 11-foot-tall skeletons with anatomic anomalies reported from the leading citizens of the times, implicating tens of thousands of people in these reports, if that is not done, and only a couple of these are true, it turns anthropology on its head.
Exactly. I don't really know what they're scared of.
Well, I think, once an institution stakes out a position, you have... this is the other... what are we really saying? a corporation or institution is corrupt, wow, that's a real newsflash. Every day, whether it's Chevron or Burger King or whatever, some institution who is organized by a governing principle of economic gain, not humanistic behavior, does something outrageous, and we wonder, well, what's the problem? The corporations are like artificial intelligence with no soul, regardless of the good-natured people who work for them. If you come up against the corporation, you're marginalized, you're sent packing. And in academia, I'll say that, would you be surprised for me to tell you that the curriculum for the medical world for med students is written by the drug companies, by Pfizer, and we all know that.
Yep.
Why is it so difficult to believe that hasn't spread to anthropology and archaeology? And like one of the articles I just wrote for Ancient American talks about the really shockingly racist beginnings of anthropology in the United States. Like Alex Hedrichka, the first curator of anthropology starting in 1910, in the Science News Journal, he says that the greatest problem facing the population of the United States is the mixture of the 1/10 inferior blood of the Negro race. I apologize for these appalling comments, but with the superior blood of the white race. These pre-Nazi eugenists were running and founding. Hedrichka created the Journal of Anthropology. Whether you like it or not, if you're an anthropologist, like if I was, I'd be coming out swinging, and I'd say, this is reprehensible. We need to reevaluate all this information.
Yes.
Hedrichka he called Louis Leakey a heretic to his face. He said nobody existed in the United States before 2000 BC and refused to look at the Folsom finds and all this other stuff for years. We're talking about a real sociopath. And as you know, sociopaths rise to prominent positions in our society, as shown by new research data. So I'll just say that this whole idea that, this is the greatest hoax and, blah, blah, blah. Listen, corporations and institutions do not act in loving and humanistic ways. It's just a reality, and it's very unfortunate. But I'm just saying, I'm showing the other side of the argument. Like, wow, it's so hard to believe that they're trying to create a preferred view of reality for economic and political gain.
Right.
So
if you look at the big view, you can understand that. But
yep.
Back in, let's see, where is it? Is it Ohio that has the serpent mounds?
Yes. Peebles County, I think.
Yes.
It's a quarter of a mile long serpent effigy.
And it's just a long, winding snake. And in the snake's mouth, if I remember right, there's an egg in it.
Yes.
And why do you think, if you're at ground level, and this thing's, maybe 10 feet tall, 10 foot high across, all the way across. It's not very high because I believe there's a golf course built into it. Am I thinking of the right place? You are.
No, absolutely. Actually, the golf course is built into the Newark Octagon and Circle, but no, you're absolutely right. It's not very tall, but it would ideally be seen from the air.
Exactly. So why is this going along the same lines as, do you think that this is going along the same lines as the Aztec lines down in down South America? A very good point.
Let's see. The Hopi have they talk of the snake people, I believe, the conventional dating of the Serpent Mound is like the Fort Ancient Culture in 1000 AD, which I think is totally inaccurate. I would recommend anybody interested to look up Ross Hamilton, Great Serpent Mound. He has books, and I'm sure you can read some of the chapters on Google Books. He has information, and he's a brilliant researcher that's well respected. I really wonder what was happening. The Native Americans 2,000 years ago didn't have a news agency and a government to censor what people hear and to marginalize what they were seeing right before their eyes. So their oral history is filled with what you would call fantastic stories of star people and different creatures, but what I'm finding from my studies is a lot of what Native Americans have said has come true in the pages of the New York Times over the last 200 years, but it's been marginalized as some unreality. I'll say that Native American oral history has been corroborated by science, like these predicting tsunami frequency on the West Coast over the last 3,500 years, the native tribes out there, or where I live in Massachusetts, an understanding of the geologic record of Lake Hitchcock over 10,000 years ago. So I don't call it Native American myth and legend. I call it oral history. And anybody who doesn't understand that concept should go spend a winter in New England outside in the woods and see what level of sophistication and connection to the land you need. And you would not pass along erroneous information in your oral history if it didn't serve a very important purpose. Native American tribes all around the country also speak of a race of giants. That's another, or I will say giants. I don't know what, I'm not claiming to know. I think there was a spiritual and warrior class of Native Americans, but then there was some other freak show like the Lovelock Giants or something. I can't claim to know. I don't have a time machine, but I'll tell you what, I have a lot of faith in the veracity of Native American oral history.
Well, and it's like, why do we disregard their oral history, and we open up every other native history in Europe or in North Africa or anywhere with open arms? We believe that.
Excellent point.
Why can't we believe what they say?
Robert Heinrich Louis in the 1920s, he was the head of some museum. I'm sorry, the name escapes me. I mean, the reference escapes me. But he was the one who shut the door on the use of Native American oral history to draw a scientific conclusion. And there was a real, denigration of oral history. And it's happened, frankly, not with white cultures, but with indigenous non-white cultures. Their oral history has been denigrated, marginalized, considered unsophisticated and superstitious. So when you go down to Pumapunku or Sacsayhuaman and you say, who built these structures? And the oral history says, there was a race of giants, essentially, that came here and had an advanced technology, for instance. That gets disregarded, and things like Pumapunku, for instance, get attributed to the Amira Indians, who had they only had copper chisels and no mathematics and written language and on and on. I just think there is a marginalization because there is a preferred view of reality. I don't know if it's an attempt to just disempower people in general, or to not allow them to point to cultures in the past that were sophisticated and were much more cooperative. I really can't claim to know the answer, but I do know there is an active move to marginalize oral history.
I have to agree with you 100% there. But I think it's pretty well known and pretty well accepted that the Native Americans in the United States, please correct me if I'm wrong, but they came from Asia, across the Bering Land Strait and then down. That's how this part of the world was inhabited. But we have artifacts found at these sites, and I believe it was down at Cahokia. They found what was it? It was a panther, if I remember right. It was a panther made of a black stone. I can't think of what the stone was.
Steatite?
Might have been. I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
But they found this panther down in Cahokia, down in southern Illinois. Panthers, I don't believe, are really that indigenous to North America up here. They're mostly all down south, down in South America. And how are these artifacts getting from down south up to the north if it wasn't the Incas or the Mayans that brought them up?
Well, I'll definitely address that. Gary C. Daniels, he was on an Ancient America Unearthed special about the Maya in Georgia, and he has a great site called Lost Worlds Georgia and Lost Worlds Florida, and he linked to a story about finding mound builder artifacts from Cahokia and different sites down at a Maya settlement in Mexico, I believe. I'll quickly say that in Illinois at one Hopewell site, they found obsidian from Wyoming, silver from Canada, shark's teeth from the Atlantic coast, shells from the Gulf Coast. There were massive trade routes all around the United States, and archaeologists, for some reason, don't like the idea of Maya influence or Mesoamerican influence on the mound builders, which I don't understand. I think there was if you look at them, if you look at the earthen pyramids with the plazas and the astronomy, it just totally smacks of Mesoamerica. You know, just these amazing steps pyramids built of earth and not of stone. I think there was a connection with all, much wider than we think. And it's proven that there was this wide trade network. You know, I really, the thing I'll say is that the Clovis barrier, the idea of, which still is valid, that some people came through the Bering Strait, but the dates have been pushed back so far now with like Cactus Hill, Virginia, Mesa Verde, Chile, Meadowcroft Shelter, Pennsylvania, back 10, 20,000 years older than the Clovis barrier, which really begs the question. The Clovis barrier has been rammed down our throat for 70 years. The crowning achievement of archaeology has been proven total science fiction since 1997. And now, after the Oregon find, it's really cemented in the minds of most archaeologists. And, it's a very difficult science. What is the problem with saying we're open to study all these anomalies, we're just doing our best? This academic arrogance and dismissiveness, I'm not a fan of. It's just like, of course, it's extremely difficult. And anthropology and archaeology are very meticulous and time-consuming and difficult fields to work in that I could never do myself, and I have a lot of respect. But there seems to be these henchmen floating around who are very arrogant and dismissive. Studying anomalies is the key to understanding the past and the key to changing theories. Einstein, with the help of Eddington, found the anomaly in Newton's theory. Eddington went to Africa, filmed the eclipse, and they changed the world and changed Newton's theory of relativity. And created Einstein's new theory of time and space based on the study of anomalies. And I encourage everyone to study anomalies. Archaeology and anthropology are riddled with anomalies, which are a sure sign that the theories are incorrect. And we're seeing that now with more and more evidence coming out. And I don't know. I understand the way these things work, and arrogance and dismissiveness, and I'm just saying, like, how about give things a fair shake and listen to all the evidence, not just come with a preconceived idea of what's right.
Well, exactly, because, it wasn't, 10 years ago when they decided, whoops, we made a mistake. Pluto is not a planet. It's no longer a planet. Something like that is so easy to just dismiss it. It's no longer a planet. But to admit that at one time there may have been someone here before the Native Americans, and they were maybe 8 to 12 feet tall. Well, what's the big deal? I mean, it's not gonna hurt anybody. It's just they got to man up and say that you were wrong.
Well, it's a good point because amateur astronomers and professional astronomers have a very good relationship.
Yeah, they do.
There's a lot of sharing of information. There's a lot of finds that both parties work together in a healthy respect. In archaeology, that doesn't exist. There is hostility and distrust. And I understand, on the alternative side, there is a lot of lazy researchers who just, repeat incorrect information and don't do the work for themselves. And the skeptics, and I understand that, rightfully so. But you have to look at your own profession and all the anomalies and all the dismissiveness and the use of consensus to marginalize real evidence. And I think it has something to do with a system of control. And, archaeology and anthropology are really, they have to do with humanity and human civilizations. And this idea that, we went from caveman to this height of where we're at now, which is which is totally false. Yes. If you look around the planet, the most sophisticated, outrageous, difficult, and needing mathematics the most stonework is the oldest everywhere. Mm-hmm. And it litters the planet from Stonehenge to Nanme Dal to Göbekli Tepe to Pumapunku, Ollantaytambo. All these sites are, and being a stonemason, they're utterly outrageous. And they are attributed to the oldest civilizations on the planet, had the least level of sophistication. It clearly speaks, like Graham Hancock would say, of another civilization that all oral history talks about, like an Atlantis or some global maritime civilization that existed like 15, 20,000 years ago. I firmly believe something was going on. I don't have all the answers, but as an open-minded observer and a stonemason, I'll tell you what, if you had 10,000 years with no math and copper chisels, you could not duplicate so much of what we find on the planet.
Yeah, and maybe someday they'll wake up and get off their butts and do a little bit more research and accept some of this stuff as actual fact, because it's there in black and white.
Well, I'll tell you a good story in regard to that. Dr. Albert Goodyear was asked when the Clovis barrier was obliterated at Monteverde, Chile. I think it was in '99. Maybe I'm wrong. Goodyear went back maybe to the Topper site in South Carolina, and he dug down deeper, and he found pre-Clovis datable remains. And other archaeologists did the same thing, and they found that, wow, there are older levels here. And when asked, he said, you don't find what you don't believe in, quite candidly. And there is I don't know if it's the nature of your mind creates reality or the holographic reality, but when people firmly believe something, they find what they believe in, if you know what I mean. And
yep.
To open your mind to different possibilities, I have stated before, I think we all share like a holographic mind, a global brain. And the more we wake up, I honestly think we can point to institutions and blame them, but we have covered this information up from ourselves in a holographic way, being immersed in a eons-long coma that we're waking up from now, if that makes sense. That there seems to be everybody's awakening to a new reality. And so I feel that more evidence will come forward because people are ready for it. It's not a matter of, and I get caught in this trap too, that evil corporation, they did this and this and this. I think we've held it from ourselves, and we all share one reality that we need to wake up from and change. We need to change the world. We're heading off a cliff with the way we are, with our unsustainable civilization. And I feel that it is time to wake up to be more respectful, forgiving, and caring, and helpful to each other, and work for the common good, not this every person for themselves mentality.
Oh, I agree 100%. It's like the road we're heading on right now, we're screwed. But we have like 10 minutes left. But I wanted to touch on the Grand Canyon. Now, there's been some alleged discoveries down there, some caves with a lot of ancient Egyptian stuff that have been found in these caves allegedly, and also I think some giants were also found there. And right now it's shut off. The government will not let anybody in that area. And do you know anything about that? Or I know you've heard about it.
Yes.
Anything about it?
1909 Phoenix Gazette, a headline story reported about Professor S.A. Jordan from the Smithsonian and E.A. Kincaid from Lewiston, Ohio. Kincaid traveled down, working for the Smithsonian as a photographer, the Colorado River, and he took pictures of his journey. He was one of the first explorers down there. And he found he stopped his canoe or whatever boat he was traveling in, and he saw this anomalous thing. He thought it was a cave, and he either climbed up 1,500 feet or went down 1,500 feet, and he found these cavernous rooms cut out of rock with I believe giant mummies with strange hieroglyphs and weapons and all these other bizarre artifacts. And the report in the Phoenix Gazette in 1909 goes into great detail, and they say things that you wouldn't normally say if you were creating a hoax. Like Kincaid talked about Buddha-like or Egyptian-like. He was really describing what appeared to be a first-hand account. He didn't say, I saw Egyptian hieroglyphs. He was trying to piece it together. And I believe it's frankly a lost civilization. I'll talk about the story. Right. The Smithsonian denied that Jordan ever worked for them, but S.A. Jordan, D-O-N, not D-A-N, shows up as a field archaeologist for the Smithsonian 2 years later. And there are many peaks around that area called like the Temple of Isis, and they have these esoteric names. And it is a no-fly zone. I read one pilot talked about to such an extent that you can't land there in emergency right now.
Right.
And I found dozens of reports that are similar to that by noted, by professionals like archaeologists and anthropologists that talk about finding a skeleton in copper armor with a copper crown and strange hieroglyphs all around the country. So there is a context of this story. And the Smithsonian seems to be mentioned quite often in these accounts. I think there's some veracity to it, and I would hope that researchers would be allowed to go in there. I personally believe in the story, and I think you're going to find more exploration of that. But it's a wild story, and I don't think it was Egyptian. I think it's an older race. My I don't know if you've been reading your Daily Giant, but
oh, yes.
I print or I talk about these accounts that myself and other researchers have found, and there are thousands of them, and a lot of them are like, they're all people digging foundations, drilling companies, digging into burial mounds, digging wells, all these companies just doing their business in the 18 and 1900s, and sometimes at like 50 feet uncovering massive human remains. And it's just like esoteric sources have said, like Madame Blavatsky and the Freemasons and the Rosicrucians and Kabbalah and on and on and on, that there were different ages of mankind. And just like megafauna, with giant beavers and everything that were in the country, there were mega humans. And I'll quickly say, I know we'll run out of time, myself and other researchers have found evidence for this. I have newspaper accounts from all over the world. This isn't just in the United States. So it is a very, very pervasive thing that you find, and you find it in the Bible. I'm a recovering Catholic. I have no political motivation here, but the Bible clearly speaks of it in other sources, throughout history. So
it does. And I know for a long time they were unearthing skulls of. It turns out they're saying they were mammoth skulls, but they were calling them Cyclops skulls, proof of the Cyclops, because it just had one big hole in the middle of its skull, and everybody thought that it was a Cyclops. But they found out later that it was, I believe it was a woolly mammoth. They were mammoth skulls.
Yes, and I understand that dynamic, mostly in the 1700s.
Right.
What's his name? Cotton Mather. He found a mammoth tooth, and he was calling it, because he was a real religious dude, and he was saying that this is from giants in the Bible. I've certainly looked at every side of it, but when a physical anthropologist trained by the head of the Smithsonian with pictures of a skull twice the size of a normal skull appears in the San Antonio Express in 1940, and Marcus Goldstein, the anthropologist, states that it is not gigantism, there is no knobbing of the knuckles, the skull is extraordinarily large, and swears up and down about its veracity. That's a different story.
These skulls were you could almost wear them as helmets. They would fit over a human head with no problem at all. Is that correct?
Oh, some of the giant skulls?
Right.
Yes, hundreds of accounts in town histories and newspaper accounts. And I say, how do you tell somebody putting a skull over their head that they don't understand human anatomy? It is clear you don't have to be a physical anthropologist to say, look at this dude's head was like 4 times my size, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I understand. There was one thing real quick. Are there any sites in the United States that people are not allowed to get into? Like a Cahokia or anything? Are there any that aren't open to the public?
Yes, every site. The Native American Graves and Repatriation Act was passed, and it is illegal to display Native American remains to the public and to dig into burial mounds. And I do not believe the U.S. government, who once had a $5 a head kill order on Native Americans out west, which I can't even comprehend, has never been too kind and thoughtful when it comes to Native American civilization. And I just think it is a weapon to be used against anomalous and giant skeletal finds. And because now you really can't unearth giant skeletons like you could at one point. the whole thing is very disturbing. Anyways, you're talking about, now that the cat's out of the bag, it is, you can wow, this is bizarre, these giant skeletons everywhere. But the reality is these are sacred burial grounds of a proud race. And we come in like colonial vultures and rip everything to shreds for artifact hunting and stuff. And like I said, not to be on my soapbox, but we really, as a society, if I took a bulldozer to a white cemetery, you think anybody would get bummed out? Our lack of respect for all civilizations that aren't European needs to expand. And I really this whole episode has left a bad taste in my mouth frankly about our society, the United States and our runaway consumer culture and a lack of care and connection for each other. I'm hopeful for the future, believe me. But there is a disturbing past that we have to face and make personal choices ourselves to create a better world and that our children want to live in, not some textathon crazy place where people are disconnected from each other. So that's my rant right there.
No, that's fine. It's 100%. You're 100% right. We've made this hole. We got to get ourselves out of it.
Yes.
Like I say, we are running out of time. Jim, I'd like to thank you very much for being on the show tonight. I want to apologize again for getting disconnected right there at the beginning. And I'd like to, in the future, get you on again because we've just scraped the surface of this in an hour.
Yeah, no, that's great. Your questions are spot on too. That's good that you did your homework and know the right questions to ask. That really helps the interview process.
Well, I've always been interested in this. I used to take my daughters down to Cahokia all the time. So the old civilizations, we don't have a Yorktown to go visit here in Central Illinois or any great history as you guys have out west or out east. So we got to go for the more ancient. Go to Cahokia.
Yeah, you're lucky.
And yeah, we are. But man, if you have never seen that place, with people that are listening or in chat, this place is immense. This Cahokia Mound, Monk's Mound, is huge. And you can stand there at the base and look at it. It's almost like you're staring up at the pyramids.
Actually, yeah. Huge. Let me interject for a second quickly. I have a page, Stone Builders, Mound Builders, and the Giants of Ancient America on Facebook where I post daily. And I have several posts and pictures of Cahokia, probably like 100 posts back, that go into detail about it. And I'm with you. Very cool.
Okay, well, thank you again. And I'm going to keep in touch with you because I really enjoy talking to you and get you back on the show again in a later date. But again, folks, this was Jim Vieira. And it's been a great show. Thank you so much, Jim.
Awesome, Jim. I appreciate the time, and take care of yourself.
You too, sir.
All right.
Bye-bye. Okay, everybody. This is going to be the end of the show now. Next week's guest is David Lowry. He's the paranormal highwayman. He's does paranormal research. He also invents paranormal equipment to use. He's just quite a neat guy, very entertaining to talk to, and I am very, very glad I can call him a friend. He's a really nice guy. So until next week, we're going to leave you with some music from David Berman, and I'm sorry, it's Jonathan Berman. Sorry about that, Jonathan Berman. And you guys have a good week, and we'll see you again next Tuesday.
We all have a little ways to avoid life. Some lose their feelings in a bottle-lasting mind. But I'm just doing the same, finding a way out of feeling the pain. We can't go back, we are so alone. Memory of your face and we're on the road.